Catherine Moore, and I am back to talk about the Districts on Committee Ministry, the Districts Committee on Ministry regarding the Board of Ordination with the Texas Annual Conference Administration. And I'm back to read. First, I want to introduce myself, and then I will read the policies. My name is Catherine Moore, and I grew up within the Texas Annual Conference Administration of the United Methodist Denomination in Houston, Texas. And my father, John Dowden, was a United Methodist minister who was also a child molester. I met with Bishop Huey in 2010, about my father, and the only thing that the Texas Annual Conference wanted to do is sweep it under the rug, because anyone who is a sexual assault victim is nothing more than an embarrassment to the Texas Annual Conference. And I did not remember enough at the time. I had repressed memories. And it took time for everything to keep coming up, and things still come up today. And I'll tell my husband, look, I've just remembered this, and I've never really told anybody. So I have been speaking out against them for quite a while, and I met with Harrison Fisher in 2015, and then later on in 2017. And Harrison Fisher handled a lawsuit that was settled out of court with Jane Doe, also known as Alicia Provost Whitfield. And she received a multi-million-dollar settlement. I met with Harrison Fisher, and long story short, Harrison Fisher leaked a document where he had wrote a letter to Bishop Huey in 2011 on behalf of Alicia Provost Whitfield, demanding $1 million because she had been sexually assaulted by Kendall Graham, a United Methodist minister that had been employed under the Texas Annual Conference Administration and placed on assignment at a church in the Beaumont area. I also was forced into supervised visitation based on false accusations by my ex-husband, Carl Edward Anthony, who feels that he and our sons would be better off if I weren't around. Meaning he wishes I didn't exist, and the reason why he wishes I didn't exist is because he wishes I were dead. So the result of that is that our 16-year-old son has repeatedly said that he wants his younger brother, who's 10, to die a slow and painful death, because that's the norm in the home of Carl Edward Anthony. Harrison Fisher told me that the Texas Annual Conference would retaliate. They told me that the Texas Annual Conference would tell the media, if this got out into the media, they would tell the media that I was mentally ill, and they would help my ex-husband get our kids away from me. So, long story short, the Texas Annual Conference should have minded their own business instead of interfering in my family custody matter, because now it's a huge mess, and they're finding out that they interfered in a custody matter that is high conflict and highly abusive, where the abuse is directed at our sons and the abuse is directed at me, and it will never end. So at the time, I didn't understand how they could interfere. When I started the supervised visitation, I figured that out. I also had 2 attorneys that were representing me. One was Elsie Martin Simon, and then the other was Harrison Fisher. They were both associated with the Texas Annual Conference Administration of the United Methodist Denomination. And I had to visit my kids at St. Stephen's United Methodist Church through supervised visitation, and I was sexually harassed at St. Stephen's United Methodist Church. The sexual harassment took place in front of the staff of St. Stephen's United Methodist Church and the Domestic Relations Office. I also should not have been forced to visit my kids at a United Methodist Church because my father sexually assaulted me, and he was employed under the Texas Annual Conference Administration. But like I said, they like that sort of thing, and they like to keep it in the family. But that's not really my thing. So I'm going to start reading the policy, and then I'm going to read an article. During the certification interview, extend hospitality. Create a hospitable waiting environment. Choose one committee member to stay in the waiting area for candidates and home church pastors serving as host. Hosts should welcome candidates, offer beverages and or healthy snacks, answer the questions, make the guests feel at home. Create a hospitable interview environment with a simple altar space, chairs arranged in a circle, and no more than 8 committee members. If home church pastor or exploring mentor is not available to accompany each candidate as his or her advocate during the interview, choose another committee member to serve as advocate. Before the candidate is invited to the interview environment, committee members should briefly discuss the information they received prior to the interview, including statement of call 3.11.2.a, I through 6, written responses to Wesley's historic questions 3.10, candidate further articulate. 3.10, and personal data and inventory, and suggest possible interview questions which will help the candidate further articulate the maturity and depth of her or his Christian faith, a genuine sense of call to licensed or ordained ministry, physical, psychological, and emotional fitness for ministry, and yet they somehow still manage to employ clergy who are capable of sexually assaulting minors and who are capable of murdering their wife in a United Methodist parsonage. Potential for effectiveness in ministry. Confirm that the candidate's other information was received and is satisfactory, including minutes from charge conference, mentor's recommendation letter, notarized disclosure form, and psychological assessment summary. I also forgot to add their history of allowing people to come back who've been accused of sexual harassment. But if you are a sexual assault survivor, you are not welcome back. You are an embarrassment to them, and if you speak out, they will retaliate. The Texas Annual Conference of the United Methodist Denomination will retaliate against any sexual assault survivor that speaks out against them. When the candidate is invited to enter, committee members should greet the candidate warmly, graciously acknowledge any obvious anxiety, state the purpose of the interview honestly and openly, begin with prayer. During the interview, committee members should express interest in the candidate's present situation, ask candidate to share his or her faith story and call to ministry, ask questions which will help the committee discern whether or not the candidate is fit for ministry. Ask candidate if she or he is aware of the behavioral guidelines and whether or not there is information he or she needs to share with the committee. During the interview, committee members should not ask questions which assume previous theological education, ask questions which assume previous pastoral leadership experience, ask questions which might be interpreted as discriminatory, and example questions which suggest a prejudice against a candidate's age, gender, ethnicity, marital status, level of education, social status, etc., unless you are a sexual assault survivor from one of their clergy. Then they don't want you. If any committee member asks an inappropriate question, because they are experts on what is appropriate, aren't they? Either the chair or advocate should feel free to invite the committee member to ask another question or to ask the question in a more appropriate way. At the end of the interview, the chair or another committee member should thank the candidate for his or her time, inform the candidate when to expect a decision, both written and oral, end with prayer. Okay, so I'm going to continue with page 9. After the certification interview, after the candidate is dismissed, debriefed, the interview, and make a decision, you will need to make one of the 3 following decisions. 1, candidate is fit for ministry. In this case, the candidate is certified. Candidates seeking ordination as deacon or elders become certified candidates and will be assigned certified mentors, and complete theological education following the steps on the certified candidate checklist. They will return to your committee annually for recertification. Candidates seeking appointment as local pastors who do not plan to attend seminary and seek ordination will request appointment. 1, if appointed, the district superintendent, DCOM, will assigns a clergy mentor from their district and notifies the candidate. Candidacy and recruitment assistant and clergy mentor chair of the assignment. The candidate must attend licensing school and begin course of study following the local pastor checklist. They will return to your committee annually for relicensing. 2, if you appointed the district superintendent DCOM, if not appointed, the district superintendent DCOM assigns a clergy mentor for their district and notifies the candidate, candidacy recruitment assistant, and clergy mentor chair of the assignment as they await an appointment. They will return to your committee annually for recertification. 2, candidate is not fit for ministry now or in the foreseeable future. In this case, candidate is discontinued. 3, candidate is not currently fit for ministry, but may be fit in the future. In this case, candidate is continued as an exploring candidate for 1 year. The committee will need to give the candidate specific reasons why they find the candidate not currently fit, along with reasonable and tangible suggestions and/or requirements which may result in the candidate becoming fit for ministry. Most exploring candidates who either self-delay or are continued work with the same exploring mentor for one additional year. If candidates are not certified within 2 years after attending the candidacy summit, they should start over or ask the district superintendent for approval to attend the candidacy summit again. In this case, the GBHM candidacy fee does not usually need to be paid again. However, $100, the candidate's portion of the psychological testing administered at the candidacy summit, will be due for the candidacy summit application. Once a decision is made, the committee should decide who will inform the candidate of the committee's decision verbally and in writing. Okay. Inform the candidate verbally as soon as possible within 24 hours. Inform the candidate in writing as soon as possible within 10 days. If the candidate is certified, include a copy of or link to the certified candidate checklist. Regardless of decisions made, the candidate should know the committee to be a caring community of Christians. I really believe that. When a difficult decision is made and the candidate is not encouraged to continue, a personal contact should be planned for the days that follow. Vocational alternatives can be explored with the candidate and assistance given in locating other employment. Candidates who experience difficulties in dealing with the board's decision should be informed about any available pastoral care options. It's interesting that they're saying they make it a priority to reach out to you if you are not approved. But that's not the case if you are a sexual assault survivor. They don't care. In fact, these are the same people who neglect their sexual ethics policy and neglect their safe sanctuary policy. They don't have the decency to give their victims of sexual assault from their clergy the same consideration that they give the people who are seeking roles as clergy. All right, so I'm going to read an article. And this is from United Methodist News. Sex abuse suit names Texas conference pastor. A United Methodist News report by Kathy L. Gilbert, 12 p.m., March 2nd, 2012. A woman who alleges she was sexually abused by a pastor in the United Methodist Texas Annual Conference filed a lawsuit February 23rd in Houston. The conference, as well as the pastor, Kendall Graham, and 3 districts are named in the suit. The plaintiff is not identified, but she was a minor when the abuse began in 2003. The plaintiff reported the abuse Bishop Janice Huey in August 2011, and the bishop immediately asked Graham to surrender his credentials A statement issued by the conference said Graham was forbidden from re-entering the church, Wesley United Methodist Church in Clute, and prohibited from any further contact with members of his previous congregation. Huey also contacted Child Protective Services and helped the young woman with specialized counseling and housing, child care, health insurance for her child, born February 9th in 2010. They offered me Bering Memorial United Methodist Church, which is a community of LGBTQ. Sexual assault, surviving sexual assault is not a sexual orientation, nor is it a sexual preference. We remain committed to the support and protection of children, and we pray for a compassionate resolution to this painful and difficult decision, Huey said. That's a lie. The woman is asking for $25 million. The suit alleges childhood sexual abuse, vicarious liability, negligence, and negligent infliction of emotional distress. She said officials knew of inappropriate conduct by Graham with other women and did nothing to stop it or protect her. Well, of course they did. Of course they did. They always do. Okay. Arnold said the conference has been advised to make no comment on those charges because the case is under investigation. The United Methodist News Service obtained a copy of the suit from the Harris County Court Office in Houston. In the suit, the woman alleges the abuse started at age 14. She went to live with Graham and his family because she was told they wanted to adopt her. The plaintiff said that in 2006, during a church-sponsored mission trip to Jamaica, members of St. Paul United Methodist Church in Port Arthur, Texas, reported inappropriate conduct by Graham to the Texas Conference. Graham was pastor at St. Paul United Methodist Church in Port Arthur, Southeast District, 2000 to 2004, St. Paul's Huntsville, West District, 2004 to 2005, Boynton Chapel, Houston Central South District, 2005 to 2010, Wesley First, Clute South District, 2010 to 2011. In the suit, the plaintiff states she and Graham were married in August 2009. She had a female child, February 9th, 2010, and Graham filed for divorce from her in February 15th, 2011. Attorneys for the Texas Annual Conference are preparing an answer to the suit. The attorney for the plaintiff, Harrison Fisher Sr., has said through an attorney handling media inquiries that he will be filing an amendment to the suit. A news conference to announce the amendment was scheduled for March 1st, then canceled. How convenient. No news conference. The filing of a sexual misconduct lawsuit against a United Methodist pastor in civil court does not mean the complainant was not heard by church leaders, says the Reverend Darrell Stevens, staff executive for sexual ethics at the United Methodist Commission on the Status and Role of Women. I know Darrell Stevens. I have a cell phone number. I have spoke with him at length about what I have been put through by the Texas Annual Conference. I have text messages from him. Gilbert is a multimedia reporter for the young adult content team at United Methodist Communications, Nashville, Tennessee. News media contact, Kathy Gilbert, Nashville, Tennessee. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to read let me see. Here we go. Dear Bishop Huey, this office has been retained by Alicia Provost Graham regarding the above-mentioned incident. She relates the following events upon information and belief that she was 9 years old. Her mother died. She, along with her siblings, were cared for by their maternal grandmother. During this time, the biological father was in prison as a result of a drug conviction. Her grandmother was a member of St. Paul United Methodist Church in Port Arthur, Texas. Miss Provost, along with her other sibling, attended St. Paul with her grandmother. Pastor Kendall Graham was appointed to St. Paul United Methodist Church. He began counseling Miss Provost approximately the tender age of 10 years of age. Pastor Graham became a confidant for her and told her that he and his wife wanted her to come and live with them, and they wanted to adopt her. Pastor Graham was appointed to a church in Huntsville, Texas, where she would go and visit from time to time. Finally, she agreed to come and live with Pastor Graham and his wife in Huntsville, with the happy thought that she would be adopted by a loving family. During her stay in Huntsville, Texas, when the abuse began, she relates that Pastor Graham began to have sexual intercourse with her at the age of 14. This continued over a period of several years. Pastor Graham divorced Teresa Graham on December 14th of 2007. Kendall Graham, while the pastor of Boynton United Methodist Church and the practicing predator, not the first practicing predator under the Texas Annual Conference administration, had unprotected sex with Miss Provost, which results in the birth of their child. He continued to live a life of deception, holding Miss Provost to the church and others as his granddaughter and their child as his great-grandchild. Miss Provost relates that she went to various conferences and trips with Pastor Graham, sleeping in a single room. Pastor Graham married Miss Provost on August 11th in 2009 in a ceremony before a justice of the peace in Fort Bend County, I think. Yeah. Pastor Graham attempted to divorce Provost in Brazoria County, Texas, just recently. This is a horrible story of deception and a flagrant misuse of pastoral authority and influence by a man professing to be called by God. Obviously, this conduct has seriously injured Miss Provost and will continue to be felt through the life of a child whom Pastor Graham has indicated to Miss Provost that he wants to continue to be an active part of the child's life. It is not Miss Provost's intention or desire to bring grief of the United Methodist Church because of a person who chooses to allow the flesh to have full reign in his life and prey on the innocents for his own sexual gratification. That sounds familiar. There is no way that Miss Provost can reclaim her virginity or her life, of which a healthy portion has been stolen, altered, and scarred. Or the life of her child, who knows what the future will bring. None of the aforementioned can be returned to Miss Provost. The only compensation is monetarily. Therefore, in an effort to resolve this matter at its lowest level, we are authorized to accept $1 million in full and final settlement of this most heinous event. Failure to tender the monies mentioned within 30 days of receipt of correspondence will result in a lawsuit being filed against Pastor Graham and his employer, which is the Texas Annual Conference. Ms. Provost will seek any additional remedies to which she will show herself, to which she may show himself entitled. All communications regarding this matter should be through this office. Do not attempt to contact our client directly. How would I get that? I just revealed the identity from the previous article. And there is a multi-million-dollar contract with those people between the Texas Annual Conference. Harrison Fisher leaked that letter in my paperwork. And that's all I have for tonight.